When I stood drenched in the rain for 3 hours at JFK Airport and still couldn't wait for my CEO wife to pick me up, my soaked self only received a cold message, urgent company matter. The very next second, my phone popped up a notification. Assistant Ethan Miller sent a screenshot from Instagram story. In the photo was Lauren Scott, her face vaguely angled under the car lights. The caption underneath read, "Thanks Lauren for the ride home." How rich. It was obvious she knew tonight was the important Scott Group charity gala, yet she still dared to bail on me just to drive her male assistant home. Without hesitation, I immediately sent that photo to the family chat group with one sentence, "Sorry, I can't make it tonight. Lauren is busy dropping her new assistant home." I finally managed to catch a cab, but I felt feverish from being soaked in the rain, so I told the driver to take me straight to the hospital. As I was looking down at the results of my medical examination, I suddenly heard a familiar voice. "Be careful." A hand reached out to steady me. I looked up, and Lauren Scott was carefully guiding Ethan Miller step by step toward a hospital bed. Ethan's left ankle was wrapped in a bandage, and he was nearly leaning entirely on her. What made my heart sink was the sight of Ethan naturally leaning his head to look at Lauren's phone screen. I clearly remembered a time when I had merely glanced unintentionally at her phone, and Lauren had frowned, immediately turning off the screen. "Mark, can I have some privacy?" Yet now, Ethan could comfortably look like that. Seeing my expression change, Lauren reflexively let go of his arm. "Mark, why are you here?" I gave a cold laugh. "Why? Is the hospital owned by you, so I'm not allowed to come?" She frowned, her voice full of irritation. "Ethan sprained his ankle, I just brought him here for an examination." She paused, then looked at me suspiciously. "You're not following me, are you?" I didn't bother to answer, just looked over at Ethan Miller. He pursed his lips, looking embarrassed and unsure what to do. Seeing my silence, Lauren became even more assertive. "He's new to the city, I'm his boss. What's wrong with caring a little about a new employee?" I smiled faintly, mockingly. "Caring to the point of abandoning your own husband at the airport?" Her face briefly froze. Just then, her phone vibrated. Ethan immediately leaned closer to see, his movement so natural it seemed he had done it countless times. "Lauren, it's the family chat group," he quietly mentioned, but when he saw the content, his face turned pale. Lauren looked down, and her face immediately darkened. She looked up sharply, glaring at me angrily. "You sent it to the family group?" Panic was clearly visible on Ethan's face. "Mark, I was just thanking Lauren for the ride home, I truly didn't mean anything else." I replied coldly. "If you walk straight, you don't fear a crooked shadow. What are you afraid of?" Lauren lowered her eyes, her voice subdued. "Mark Johnson, do you absolutely have to make everything so ugly?" I burst out laughing. "Who is being ugly? You're the one who broke the date, you're the one who lied, and now you're blaming me." She was speechless, her face completely pale. After a long moment, she managed to force out the sentence. "So you really were following me?" I lightly shook the wristwatch in my hand. "I came for a checkup." Only then did she notice my pale face, a flicker of panic in her eyes, and she instinctively reached out to help me. "You have a fever, let me take you home." I leaned away to avoid her touch, my eyes glancing toward Ethan Miller. "What about him?" She answered immediately, her voice so natural it chilled my heart. "Of course, I have to take him home first, his foot is injured." Then her voice softened slightly. "Mark, don't overthink things." Looking at her awkward expression, I suddenly found it ridiculous. "No need." I turned my back and walked toward the car parked by the roadside, not bothering to look back. Relying on yourself is better than relying on others. I finally understood that saying today. As the car door closed, I heard Ethan's choked voice behind me. "Lauren, it's my fault." Through the rearview mirror, Lauren was still standing in the same spot, her face pale and unsightly. And I, finally, was completely sobered up. The next morning, when I woke up, Lauren, who had moved to the living room to sleep, was already impeccably dressed standing in the middle of the living room. Seeing me, she quickly stepped forward, her voice softer than last night. "I dropped Ethan off and left immediately last night, I didn't stay." She paused briefly and added, This time it really was an urgent company matter. I replied indifferently to her statement. I didn't say you had to pick me up. Not wanting to continue arguing, I silently walked straight into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. She followed me, her voice carrying a somewhat forced sense of apology. I didn't notice you were sick yesterday, it's my fault. The glass rotated lightly in my hand, the water's surface clearly reflecting the coldness on my face. Seeing I didn't respond, Lauren changed her tone, trying to ease the tension. But you also have a fault. Even if you're dissatisfied with me, you shouldn't remain silent and not go to the main house, making your parents worry like that. She tried to end the topic with a gentle tone. Alright, fine, let's say both of us are at fault this time. Let's let it go and not bring it up again. I put the glass down, the crisp sound resonating on the metal countertop. Lauren seemed to misunderstand this as a sign of reconciliation, so she stepped closer and continued. Ethan just started at the company. He's still a young man. He's very serious about his work. He just has a slightly more lively, open, and somewhat naive personality. If you interact with him a few more times, you'll see he's actually very nice. I cut her off. No need. The smile on Lauren's face stiffened. What do you mean? I looked up at her. Last night, I saw him directly looking at your phone with my own eyes. Someone who can casually look at their boss's phone. I don't think a person like that is suitable to be an executive assistant. The corner of my mouth slightly lifted, my voice full of sarcasm. I truly have no interest in finding out just how naive he is. She immediately retorted, her tone becoming sharper. He's just entered the corporate environment. He doesn't understand many of the rules. Don't violate company regulations and fire an employee without cause over such a small matter. I let out a soft laugh. I remember a time when I merely leaned my head over to look, and you told me to give you some privacy. But fine, Scott Group is yours, whatever you say goes. I turned and walked toward the door. If you want to keep him, I can't interfere. Lauren's expression completely darkened. She stood still, her chest rising and falling a few times, then she gave a cold laugh. Fine, think whatever you want to think. She angrily grabbed her briefcase, but before leaving, she opened the refrigerator and took out a thermal bag. I noticed the inside was bulging, revealing the corner of an exquisitely wrapped cake box that looked strangely familiar, exactly like the kind of cake I made for a friend a few days ago. That morning, Sophia Scott sent me another message on WeChat, again a screenshot from Ethan Miller's Instagram story. The photo showed an exquisite breakfast, next to it a portion of the all-too-familiar dessert. Thanks, Lauren, for the lovely breakfast and dessert, ready for a productive day. A cute heart emoji was added at the end of the line. I stared at the photo for 3 seconds, then let out a soft laugh. That was the exact tiramisu I had made myself last week. Because I made a bit too much, I had portioned it into glass jars and stored them in the refrigerator. And the thermal bag Lauren carried with her this morning contained exactly that treat. She took the cake I made again, just to curry favor with Ethan Miller. My finger lightly slid across the screen, closing the chat window. The window pane clearly reflected the cold smile at the corner of my mouth. Since they liked this sweet treat so much, I didn't mind letting them enjoy it a little more. A week later, the Scott Group corporate gala was held. Crystal chandeliers shone brightly, making the ballroom blaze with luxurious light. I walked in, leading Lucky, my pet dog. The atmosphere around me momentarily paused, and a few curious eyes focused on me. Mark Johnson looks so dashing today, why is he bringing a dog though? Amidst the whispers, I smiled and walked toward the sofa area. My assistant, Hannah Lewis, quickly brought me an exquisite box, inside which was tiramisu, the exact kind in Ethan Miller's photo. Under everyone's questioning gaze, I placed the dessert down in front of Lucky. A manager from the marketing department couldn't help but quietly remark, "Mark, dogs shouldn't eat too much sweet food, should they?" I gently stroked Lucky's head, my voice just loud enough for the nearby tables to clearly hear. "It's fine. This is a snack I specially made for him." I paused, then deliberately sighed, my voice regretful. But during his checkup a few days ago, the vet said sweet things aren't good for his health. The silver spoon lightly scooped up some cream, and Lucky happily licked it clean. I smiled slightly. Today will be the last time I let him eat it. The remaining portions of the cake have been disposed of completely, in the literal sense of the word. The atmosphere in the ballroom instantly fell into a stunned silence. A few seconds later, I don't know who took a sharp inhale, followed by countless eyes simultaneously focusing on one corner, where Ethan Miller was sitting. Today, he was specially dressed in a brand new suit, but now his face was pale, his eyes staring intently at the plate of dessert in front of Lucky. I calmly used a napkin to wipe my hands, watching him tremble all over under the surrounding mocking gazes. When the first suppressed giggle came from the accounting department, Ethan completely collapsed. He covered his face, stumbling as he ran out of the ballroom, his steps unsteady in his sneakers. By the champagne tower, Lauren Scott stood, the wine glass in her hand shaking slightly. I looked up, meeting her horrified eyes, and gently raised my glass with a soft smile. That's what you call disposing of completely, right? When the sound of a key turning in the lock echoed, I was dusting the surface of the coffee table. The door was forcefully pushed open, and angry footsteps rushed straight into the living room. Mark Johnson. Lauren's voice was as sharp as a knife cutting through glass. What exactly do you want to do? I slowly looked up, seeing that she hadn't even had time to take off her coat, her eyes blazing with fury. Are you that petty, venomous, and narrow-minded? She stepped closer, slamming her hand down on the coffee table, causing the music box on it to spring up slightly. At the gala, you humiliated Ethan Miller in front of everyone. Do you despise him so much that you think he doesn't deserve to eat something you made? Do you think you're so superior? Looking at her trembling with anger, I found it amusing. I gave him the cake because I wanted to apologize for my attitude at the hospital that day on your behalf. She refused to stop, her voice getting higher and higher. I just wanted to reconcile, to ease the atmosphere a little. Yet you, Lauren Scott. I softly called her name, cutting her off. My voice was so deep and calm that it made her freeze as if someone had hit the pause button. She gasped, glaring at me, but I didn't argue as usual. I just quietly opened a drawer and took out a music box engraved with the name Us. A gift she had waited in line for 3 months to buy during our first year of dating. Her gaze stopped at the box, wavering for a moment, then becoming more agitated. Don't think bringing out these old things will soften my heart. You've gone too far this time. I gently placed the music box on the table. You misunderstood. She gave a cold laugh. Misunderstood? Then why did you bring it out? I didn't answer. I just bent down and took a hand hammer from the shelf under the coffee table, its metal head gleaming under the ceiling light. Lauren's face instantly froze. When the hammer swung down, her pupils contracted. Wait. Crash. The sharp sound of shattering was deafening. Crystal shards scattered across the sheepskin rug, reflecting the light like shattered stars. Are you insane? Lauren screamed, her face pale as she lunged to snatch the hammer from my hand. Bop. The second strike, then the third. Gears flew out, the rotating shaft broke into pieces, the metal plate engraved Us was dented and warped. By the time the final hammer blow fell, the music box was completely destroyed, turned into a pile of wreckage that could not be put back together. Lauren stood rooted to the spot, her lips trembling, unable to speak a single word. I let go of the hammer, and a piece of broken glass fell from my palm. Lauren Scott. My voice rang out clearly and as cold as ice. Let's get a divorce. She looked as if someone had stabbed her directly in the chest, staring in shock at the debris, then looking up at me, her eyes empty as if she had just seen a stranger. The wreckage of the music box lay silently on the table, reflecting the distorted and shattered shadows of two people, just like this relationship. Lauren's parents arrived faster than I expected. When the doorbell rang, she was sitting in the study, adamantly refusing to sign the divorce papers. I went to open the door. Mrs. Scott tried to force a strained smile. Mr. Scott stood behind her with a cold face, carrying 2 boxes of nutritional gifts, as if a few expensive items could mend the cracks their daughter had caused. Mark, Mrs. Scott grasped my hand the moment she walked in, her palm warm and damp. Tell us clearly what happened, don't be so drastic. Lauren has been stubborn since she was little, please concede to her a little. I gently pulled my hand back and led them into the living room. Hearing the movement, Lauren walked out of the study. A hint of smugness flashed across her face, She seemed certain that her parents would help turn the situation around. "Mrs. Scott, Mr. Scott." I calmly poured them tea. "Since you've arrived, I think we should clarify everything and put an end to it." I took out my phone, opened my photo library, and swiped through the pictures one by one. A photo of the heavy rain at the airport, Ethan Miller's Instagram story screenshot, a snippet of the hospital surveillance footage, and finally, a picture of the sweet cake. Each time a picture was shown, Mr. and Mrs. Scott's expressions stiffened further. On the 15th of last month, Lauren said she would pick me up at the airport but didn't show up. I was drenched in the rain for 3 hours, and then I had a high fever. My finger paused on the photo of the hospital examination receipt. And she, at that time, was dropping Ethan Miller home. Mrs. Scott slightly opened her mouth, but before she could say anything, I continued. "I went to the hospital for a checkup and coincidentally ran into them together." Lauren's first reaction wasn't to explain, but to accuse me of following her. I saw Mr. Scott frown, the lines between his brows deepening. "A few days ago, the sweet cake I made myself, she took it and gave it to Ethan Miller to win his favor." This is a photo from his Instagram. You can clearly see the sleeve of Lauren's suit jacket next to it. I brought the phone closer, my voice cold. Afterwards, she still brazenly said that I was making a mountain out of a molehill. Suddenly, Lauren jumped up furious. "Mark Johnson, sit down. Sit down." Mr. Scott roared like thunder. The sound was so loud that Mrs. Scott flinched and trembled. I still calmly opened the final audio file. Her scream from the argument the day before echoed through the living room. "Do you think he doesn't deserve to eat something you made? How superior do you think you are?" When the audio recording ended, the room fell into a terrifying silence. The teacup in Mrs. Scott's hand gently touched the porcelain saucer, making a tiny but chilling sound. Mr. Scott's face had darkened like the bottom of a pot. I put my phone away and looked directly at them. "If your son met a wife like this, would you advise him to continue enduring it?" The corners of Mrs. Scott's eyes were red. Mr. Scott sighed heavily. Their eyes met for a moment, caught between the instinct to protect their daughter and the truth tearing them apart. Finally, Mr. Scott stood up, patted Lauren's shoulder lightly, his voice low. "Figure it out yourself and deal with it properly." Mrs. Scott hesitated, looking at me for a moment, wanting to say something but then stopping, and quietly turned to leave with her husband. The door closed, the slight echo reverberating in the room. Lauren's face looked as if all strength had been drained from her, her eyes vacant. Perhaps she had never considered that even her parents wouldn't take her side. Even pushed to this point, she stubbornly refused to sign the divorce papers, believing that I was just being impulsive, temporarily angry. She thought that if I just calmed down, everything would return to how it was. But I had decided to leave. The steady, heavy sound of the suitcase wheels rolling on the wooden floor echoed. From the living room came the sound of hurried footsteps. Lauren stood at the door, still tightly holding the unsigned divorce papers in her hand. "Are you really going?" Her voice was hoarse and much weaker, with noticeable dark circles under her eyes. "Can we sit down and talk again?" I zipped up the suitcase. The crisp sound of the metal teeth closing rang out in the quiet space. "Everything that needed to be said has been said. So where are you going?" She took a step forward, her fingers unconsciously clutching the edge of the paper. "At least let me know. It doesn't matter." I stood up, putting my passport and plane ticket into my carry-on bag. "I will be back in 2 months. I hope you will have thought everything through by then." Lauren's throat moved slightly, as if she wanted to say something but swallowed it down. Perhaps she still thought I was just leaving the house in anger, like in previous arguments, and would make up a few days later. But this time was not like before. I pulled the suitcase to the door. Before stepping out, I turned to look at Lauren still standing in the same spot. The afternoon sun slanted through the window, her shadow stretched long on the floor, lonely and distant, cutting across between us. "Mark, I didn't let her finish, and gently closed the door. The taxi sped away on the road heading to the airport. The phone screen in my pocket vibrated continuously. The message displayed on the screen was from Lauren. I didn't open it, only swiped away the notification to make it disappear in silence. The scenery outside the car window rushed by quickly, the city lights drawing out into blurred streaks of light like a series of old photos gradually fading in memory. Before boarding the plane, I turned off my phone. This flight had no return ticket, no planned day to come back. I needed the space 10,000 feet in the air. I needed 2 months of complete separation. I needed to leave that suffocating house to prepare for what was coming next. When the plane landed in the familiar city, the rainy season had just ended. I pulled my suitcase out of the gate, the damp wind carrying the smell of earth after the rain blew onto my face, moist and cold. 2 months was enough time for everything to settle, including my decision. I didn't notify anyone, just took a taxi straight to the mansion that used to be our home. When the key turned in the lock, I heard chatting and cheerful laughter inside, that warm sound belonging to a family that I hadn't felt in a long time. I pushed the door open and the scene before me made me stop short. Lauren was sitting in the host's chair, with Mr. Scott and Mrs. Scott on either side, and Ethan Miller was putting a piece of sweet and sour pork ribs into Mrs. Scott's bowl. There were 8 dishes on the table, all Mrs. Scott's favorites. This young man is so thoughtful. Mrs. Scott laughed, her voice full of joy. He knows what we like to eat and is so considerate. Mr. Scott said nothing, but the smiling creases at the corner of his eyes were obvious. Ethan blushed and lowered his head, his embarrassed demeanor exactly like a filial son-in-law meeting his in-laws for the first time. The wheel of my suitcase rolled across the floor, making a soft clack. All 4 people in the room simultaneously turned back. The air froze for a moment. Lauren reacted first. The chair under her scraped against the wooden floor, making a shrill screech. "Mark!" She nearly sprang up, her face clearly showing surprise, panic, mixed with a little inexplicable joy. "You're back? Where have you been these past 2 months? I've been so worried about you." She quickly walked over, intending to hug me. She still faintly smelled of Ethan's cologne. I leaned away, avoiding her, my eyes sweeping past her shoulder, stopping at the dining table where Ethan was still sitting. "Lauren." I smiled softly, nodding my chin toward Ethan. "People say you shouldn't let an overly dedicated employee stay at your house for too long, right?" Lauren froze, her arms suspended in midair, stopping halfway, unsure what to do. Behind her, Mrs. Scott dropped her chopsticks, the sound ringing out sharp and cold. "I won't interrupt your family dinner anymore," I said softly, then turned and walked toward the door. Before I could step out, Lauren quickly chased after me. The sound of her heels urgently tapping on the cobblestone path echoed behind my back. She tightly gripped my wrist, the force painful. "Mark, let me explain first." Her breath carried a faint smell of wine. "Ethan, he's just..." I shook her hand off and pressed the car lock. The headlights flashed, and in that instant, Lauren's face stiffened. In the passenger seat, a young woman was looking down at documents, her gold-rimmed glasses reflecting the white light. "Who is she?" Lauren's voice suddenly shot up, her trembling finger pointing straight at the car. "Mark Johnson, you've been with her for the past 2 months, haven't you?" I let out a soft laugh. The sound ringing out in the night was cold and sarcastic. "Lauren, you can't just throw accusations around." I slowly opened the car door. The woman in the car looked up, the corner of her mouth slightly lifted, her smile vague. "The relationship between her and me." I intentionally drew out my words, looking straight at Lauren. "It's probably the same as the relationship between you and Ethan." I adjusted my jacket and introduced her in a steady voice. "This is my cousin, Hannah Lewis. She just graduated, is interning at Johnson Group, and is temporarily working as my executive assistant." Hannah Lewis gently pushed up her glasses, smiling politely. "Hello, Lauren." Lauren opened her mouth but couldn't utter a word. Under the moonlight, her face was distorted as if suffocated between anger and shame. All the accusations she hadn't had time to voice turned into a joke. 3 months ago, she had used the exact same words. "You misunderstood, Ethan Miller is just an employee." It turns out that when the knife of suspicion cuts, no matter who you are, you feel the same pain and bleed just the same. I offered the divorce proposal once again. Lauren stared at the paper as if it were a beast. "Mark, stop making a scene." She reached out to grab my wrist, but I leaned away, avoiding her. "It was my fault before, I apologize. Ethan, I can move him to another branch or transfer his department, but firing him is impossible. I finished the second half of her sentence for her, the corner of my mouth curving slightly, my voice carrying a cold hint of sarcasm. Because he didn't violate company regulations, right? Lauren's throat moved slightly. Her silence was a tacit acknowledgement of that ridiculous logic. The crystal chandelier lights in the living room suddenly shone brightly, becoming dazzling. I turned my head and saw Mr. Scott and Mrs. Scott standing on the stairs. I didn't know when they got there. Mrs. Scott was even holding an unfinished cross-stitch piece. "Mark?" Mr. Scott spoke first, his tone like a scolding parent to a stubborn child. "Lauren has conceded this much. You should also be reasonable." Mrs. Scott hurried down, grabbing my hand. The gold bracelet on her wrist brushed against my skin, causing me discomfort. What kind of issue between a husband and wife can't be forgiven? Who stays angry overnight? If you keep making such a fuss, aren't you just embarrassing both families? I slowly pulled my hand back, my gaze calmly observing their faces, that same look of fake, superior tolerance. 2 months ago, when the truth was clear, they chose silence out of guilt. But now, thinking that I would yield again as before, they started putting on an air of moral persuasion. The phone rotated in my palm. I dialed the first number in my contacts. "Mom." As only those 2 words rang out, Lauren immediately stiffened, her pupils contracting. "Have Blue proceed with the previous plan." I spoke, my voice steady and decisive. Hanging up, the space fell into an eerie silence. Mr. Scott's expression changed. He was startled, then spoke sharply. "Mark, what are you doing?" The twilight outside the window was gradually fading, the sky stained purplish-gray. I looked toward the Scott Group headquarters building, my mother's words from the balcony of the Zurich hotel last month ringing in my head. The Scott family has profited quite a bit from the Johnson family these past few years. Now is the time for them to let go. At that time, my mother held a glass of wine, the light from the projector shining on her face, illuminating the stark red figures on the financial report. All of them were projects Lauren had proudly called her independent achievements. But every single number in them was parasitic on the Johnson Group's resource network. Less than 24 hours after that call, Scott Group's core stock system began to freefall. I sat in my mother's office, watching the financial monitoring screen flicker continuously. My mother's assistant was reporting. All 5 projects, after our capital withdrawal, have been simultaneously suspended. The bank has also sent people to their headquarters. My mother unhurriedly poured tea, white steam rising from the teapot spout. The old fox of the Scott family relied on joint ventures to garner a lot of profit over the years. Now, they must return both the principal and the interest. This time, the Scott family was truly panicked. They finally understood the severity of the problem. They frantically called, texted, and even came to the house to beg to see my mother. But she either didn't answer the phone or sent her secretary to meet them. Under the pressure of imminent bankruptcy, Lauren finally agreed to sign the divorce papers. The day we received the divorce certificate, the sky was heavy and overcast. Outside the county clerk's office, Lauren looked so haggard she was barely recognizable. Gone was her confident, proud demeanor, her shirt was wrinkled, and her collar was completely askew. She stared intently at the paper in my hand, her voice husky. "Mark, I admit that what happened between Ethan and me was wrong, but did we really have to go this far just because of that?" The autumn wind carried dry dust as it swept between us, chilling to the bone. I looked at her, my eyes calm. "Lauren Scott, if Ethan Miller were a female employee, would you have given her the tiramisu I made for you to eat?" She opened her mouth but couldn't answer. "Would you have abandoned me alone at the airport for 3 hours, soaking in the rain until I developed a fever, just because she said she was afraid? Would you have been angry with me because of her, or looked down on me because of her like this?" Lauren's throat trembled a few times. In the end, she said nothing. Because she knew I was right. I turned and walked away, the sun hitting the divorce paper in my hand, making it feel hot. In the rearview mirror, Lauren was still standing in the same spot. Her shadow stretched long and distorted on the ground like the final thorn that had just been pulled from my heart. At 3 a.m., as I was reviewing the Johnson Group's financial report, Ethan Miller's message popped up on the screen. "Thank you for making us complete." The screen light reflected a cold smile at the corner of my mouth. He didn't know that on the very day Lauren signed the divorce papers, Scott Group stock had been suspended from trading 3 times due to hitting the floor limit. I deleted that meaningless provocative message and continued to work. A few minutes later, the phone vibrated again with a message from Sophia Scott. "Thank you. Because of Lauren's recklessness, I had long lost faith in Scott Group. Thanks to your reminder, I managed to submit my resignation before everything collapsed." That's right, I was the one who reminded her to withdraw early before my mother made her move. 3 months later, the front pages of financial news were replaced by a shocking headline. Breaking news: famous female CEO and parents murdered on wedding night. The coffee cup in my hand paused in mid-air. In the illustration, the familiar mansion was surrounded by bright yellow police tape. I gently swiped the screen, reading the news headlines, and the first name that appeared chilled my heart. After being forced to divorce Mark Johnson, Lauren Scott did not cherish Ethan Miller as he had once dreamed. On the contrary, after losing me, and losing the backing of the Johnson Group, all the resentment and hatred over the Scott Group's collapse were vented onto him. Less than a month after the divorce, Lauren married Ethan Miller. Everyone believed it was a true love triumphing over a suitable match. Until the police expanded their investigation and discovered that Lauren Scott had used Ethan's ID to borrow $10 million in high-interest loans from 7 different underground lending organizations. She intentionally initiated the loans the day after registering the marriage. In the call, Hannah Lewis calmly reported, "All loan agreements included a copy of the marriage certificate. The creditors only recognized the borrower as Ethan Miller." Her voice paused slightly, then she added in a low tone, "The most ironic thing is that Lauren didn't use that money to save Scott Group but secretly bought real estate overseas. Right before the murder occurred, she had completed all the immigration procedures for her entire family. They were scheduled to fly to Switzerland on Thursday." Hannah Lewis paused for a few seconds, then spoke softly. "On Thursday night, Ethan discovered plane tickets and debt collection letters in the safe in the study. Security camera footage shows that at 10:17 p.m., Ethan carried a plate of fruit into the living room. At 10:23 p.m., Mr. Scott's horrifying scream rang out, waking up the entire mansion. The forensic report indicated that Mrs. Scott was stabbed 9 times. Mr. Scott had a fruit knife pierce his carotid artery, and Lauren. I zoomed in on the photo in the news. On the stretcher of the ambulance, her face was covered in blood, and her lower back had also been stabbed multiple times. In the television news report, the reporter was interviewing the investigating police officer. Suspect Ethan Miller admitted that after seeing a copy of his ID in the loan files, he only then realized his wife had used his name to borrow over $10 million in high-interest loans. I turned off the television and reopened the Johnson Group's project book. Outside the window, the bright early summer sun spread across the glass. Ethan was arrested at the scene and indicted on 2 charges, intentional murder and intentional assault. Due to the particularly serious nature of the case, he was quickly sentenced to death. On the afternoon the verdict was announced, I was representing the company to sign a strategic cooperation agreement worth tens of billions of dollars with a multinational conglomerate at the most luxurious Waldorf Astoria hotel in the city center. The signing ceremony went smoothly. When the press conference ended, my team and I prepared to go up to the highest floor, where a private revolving restaurant was located to hold the celebration party. Stepping across the gold-tiled grand lobby of the hotel, just as I was about to walk in, the phone in my pocket vibrated slightly. I took it out and saw an anonymous text message. The number was displayed as unknown. "I'm sorry, I hope we can still be husband and wife in the next life." I let out a soft laugh. Even in this situation, she knows how to disgust others. That truly is Lauren's style. My finger lightly touched the delete key, and the message, along with her last shred of tattered regret, vanished from the screen. The revolving door of the hotel swallowed my shadow in the brilliant light. Behind me, a cleaner was bending down to wipe away the shoe print where I had just stood when I received the message, as if the very trace of that woman's existence was not even worthy of remaining on this ground.